we are fortunate to have the Indian ambassador to Iceland, Ambassador Shyam here with us. And with that, we have three exciting teams that are trying to bridge the gap between India and Iceland. These are all good friends of mine, and I've known them for years and worked with them. So it gives me great pleasure to at least start this meeting with something that is close to my heart, which is India and Iceland. And happy to start this year with this webinar. I will hand over to Ólafur, who will kind of run through the agenda for us, and then I will introduce each of the speakers as we go through the seminar. Ólafur?
Thank you, Bala. Welcome to this webinar hosted by the Icelandic Indian Trade Council. The council had its annual general meeting earlier this morning, and we often use this occasion to organize a seminar or conference of some sort. And this time we focus on the startups that are building bridges between India and Iceland. As Bala mentioned, Iceland and India now have a vibrant startup ecosystem, which was not always the case. The journey of building world-class startups by founders in India or Iceland is similar. So we will hear from three companies who are seeing opportunities in India and Iceland while they are building the startup. After we hear from the Indian ambassador, His Excellency Balasubramanian Shyam, we'll hear from Jatin Solanki, co-founder of Expertrons, a company that has been called Netflix for careers. Then from Sigurlaug Ásta, or Silla Jonsdottir, CEO of Retina Risk, in my view, a beautiful example of how a solution developed in one of the world's smallest countries is scalable in the world's soon-to-be largest population. And then our third speaker is Amit, Saxena, founder and CEO of eKosh Finance, a network bank platform that's designed to help and transform micro businesses in India. But Bala, you'll introduce the ambassador for us, won't you?
Yes. Thank you, Ólafur. Ambassador, His Excellency Shyam Balakrishnan, welcome to Iceland. I don't have to say a lot about you, but I think it will be nice to hear from you on how you see the Indo-Icelandic relationship moving forward, and maybe in the context of startups and the early stage companies that we are very excited about today. The floor is yours.
I would like to thank the Icelandic India Trade Council for having put together this event on startup bridges, particularly Mr. Bala, Mr. Ólafur, and other members of the council here, and our guests who are going to give us an interesting information. So the focus, as we had pointed out, is to be on startups. I just thought I'll give a brief introduction on the startup scene in India. So if I may, yes, we have a vibrant startup scene in India, which is probably the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Of course, the story begins in 2016 with Prime Minister Modi announcing support for startups. Soon after, in 2019, we had 1,300 startups. The number has progressively increased, so much so that even during COVID, we did have 1,600 new startups, which actually had given us a very vibrant stream. Every year, the number of unicorns have also been increasing. Unicorns, as you know, is those with a total of over USD 1 billion. It had been 11 unicorns till July this year. I guess the pandemic is helping in ways sometimes. 7 unicorns last year when pandemic was its peak, and previously 6. So just on the tech startups scene in India alone, we have about 12,500 startup companies now. So you can this gives an indication on the vibrancy of the startup sector. Now, just for this quarter, and the data in this slide, as in the succeeding ones, have been taken from NASSCOM, which has kindly put together a lot of information in their quarterly report, which I shall be more than happy to share with you. And just for a heads up, there is this unicorn tracker, which you can probably look at to get an overall idea of the scene in India. For just this quarter, the funding has been over $6.5 billion. And we have seen about 11 unicorn for this brief period alone. And the top funded sector has been the fintech sector, followed by the food sector. So these have been the most important sectors which have seen a lot of investment. So far, the number of unicorns are 53, in which, as I had told you, that the first quarter had seen 15 unicorns. The second quarter has seen 11 unicorns. So overall, you can see that most of this growth is happening in the fintech sector, as well as in the SaaS and social commerce space here. Among the different investors, Tiger Global has invested the maximum, and some of them have moved from the late phase into the IPO filling phase also. So you could see that the most of the investments are made in the growth, though in the early sector, again, there are some of them who are willing to fund it. As far as the deal size goes, you could see that the quantum of investment has been continuously on the increase in the high value segment. Of course, there are other segments in which people would like to invest, particularly in the early stages. The funding by stages, as far as that is concerned, you see that most of that is the growth stage. While the early bird gets the worm, that could be true, but you have funding only 9%, followed by the late stage, which takes 30%. So you could see that the sector here is fairly vibrant in terms of different sectoral funding, fintech being the maximum. Generally, it has been the maximum, but food tech sometimes is on par with the fintech sector. And this is the overall sectoral distribution in this space. Yeah. Now, we go to the sector-wise breakup, in which you have top deals coming up. This gives you a fair idea of the different areas in which different investors have been investing in India. And I just wanted to give a short idea. Of course, the data is from NASSCOM, as I told you, put together by PGA, of the different sectors as well as companies which have seen a lot of movement on this startup space. And as you can see, most of this investment is happening in the growth phase, though a few of them are in the late phase also. Now, as I said, with PM's support in 2016, that was the starting year for many of the startups. Those startups did exist before that. Government has put up an entire website for such of those who are interested in more information, which at the moment has about 56,000 startups. You could probably bookmark this page and at leisure go and visit it. And support has been given by the government in respect of the software technology parks, which basically act as incubation centers. Then the government has also helped tie up with the entrepreneurs as well as the those willing to fund it. So you have the Startup India Seed Fund, and of course the independent initiatives as those from the NASSCOM. We have a program by the Goldman Sachs, which is about 10,000 women have been supported. Facebook, in partnership with Startup India, has disbursed cash grants of about $50,000 to each of the 5 top selected startups. So you can see that the government has played a very active role insofar as bringing both these sectors together, the entrepreneurs as well as the funding. So I wanted to give you a brief idea of the startup space before I delve into the opportunities that Iceland has. Obviously, every day in the newspapers, you see the amount of funding that Iceland is committing to various projects. I keep telling the Indian investors, as Bala has pointed out in several occasions, that the population as the size is such that you can probably test your startup here before you can scale up in volumes elsewhere. So the possibility of working together is twofold for both India and Iceland, which is rich in capital. At the same time, there is much higher returns on investment. Of course, there are risks, but all the same, that returns on investment is already very high. We have a very high, vibrant startup sector. I'm sure that there is a scope for mutual partnership. So my timing for 7 minutes is over. So thank you very much for hearing me out.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think now we will switch over to hearing from the founders who are building these unicorns, and maybe the first one would be Jatin. Jatin, maybe you can start with your journey, and your time starts now.
Great. So thanks a lot for this opportunity. Really good to hear from you, Bala, and I mean, just to know about the sector and everything. So glad to be on this platform. And I mean, about our journey at Expertrons. Hi, this is Jatin Solanki. Me and my co-founder, both of us were batchmates, hostelmates from IIT Bombay, have done our engineering. And we are second-time entrepreneurs. Like, we have spent the last 10 years in education technology. And with Expertrons, the idea, I mean, the company which we are building is essentially Netflix for careers. And when I call it Netflix for careers, I mean a lot of experts coming here, sharing their experience in the form of our patent pending technology, which is video bots. So how on LinkedIn, I can only read about Bala's career journey. On Expertrons, I'll be able to talk to Bala's video bot, and I'll be able to know more about his career journey. And that's how kind of we grew in the last 18 months. We have now had more than 5,000 experts coming and sharing their experience on our platform. So you can actually go there and you can talk to these 5,000 plus experts who are sharing their experience from all these possible top companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, OnePlus, Sequoia Capital, BCG, McKinsey. Not only a job or an internship experience, but also say a B school experience like an IIM, ISB, Harvard Business School, so on and so forth. And these experts can be anywhere in the globe, and they can share their experience on our platform. And anyone can, like, on the other side, the aspirants who are aspiring to get to the right career journey, right dream jobs, they can actually come here and talk to these video bots and then decide to book a one-on-one consultation with these experts. And interestingly, like, globally, there are 1.85 billion professionals who are looking to kind of and who are going to kind of change their careers 5 to 7 times in their lifetime. And in each of these career changes, you'll be looking for the right mentor, right expert, right network of people who can guide you for the next step. And this is essentially democratizing that content. In Iceland alone, there are like over 100,000 professionals who are kind of looking for the right switch, right jump. In India, there are close to 30 million aspirants who are in their higher education looking for dream job, dream internship. And these are kind of localized markets to whom we kind of intend to serve. And really glad to be on this platform and glad to be sharing more about our journey. And like, we are backed by marquee investors. Interestingly, even Bala and our conversation went in a similar way when we kind of started our company 18 odd months back. And even for Bala, like Iceland Venture Studios, this was the first investment they made, which was outside of Iceland without meeting the founder. So both of this was kind of very unique and new to Iceland Venture Studios at that point. But we were glad to kind of have him on our side right from the start of the journey. Post which, I mean, we did our seed round, we did our pre-series A round a few months back, and we are backed by marquee investors. We are backed by Mr. Anant Maheshwari, who is the Microsoft India's president. We are backed by Kunal Shah, who, like, we just saw a slide with Cred as his company. So we are backed by marquee investors like them. Ivy Cap Ventures, a lot of interesting investors from India and even from Iceland. So really glad to be kind of backed by really good people in this journey. And on the other side, like, there are more than 250,000 aspirants who are kind of coming, consuming this content. And we have been able to help them in their career journeys, and that has kind of led to really good growth even during this COVID times. So we have kind of grown 57x even in terms of our revenues, even in terms of our our users using our app. Like, cumulatively, they've spent close to 200 million minutes on the app. So it's been an amazing journey of how you can make this content available and being this video first platform. And what we intend to do, of course, what Instagram did to Facebook, we intend to do something similar to a use case of what LinkedIn does in the professional market. And we are a video first approach market with we have the largest library of career experiences. So anyone can come here, watch the content, get help in their career journeys, and then can decide to get a premium from us. And how a Netflix is recommending you that, hey, these are the movies you should be watching because say you like comedy or you like adventure, we'll recommend you that, hey, these are the experts you should be talking to. Because say, Jatin, you come from a tier 2 city, you have done your engineering from a tier 1 college, you want to go to say FMCG companies. So I'll be recommended experts who are the most suited for me. And interestingly, the geography is flat out here, like the experiment which we have been able to scale here in India. For us, the geography is flat out there. Like the first 100 experts were the most difficult to get. We had to kind of push our friends, families, like we had to push our batchmates, seniors from our college to kind of come on board. But the remaining 4,900 came in more easily. Like someone in Stanford Library today can download the app and can start recording their career experience. And because the geography is flat, we know that we can move to Iceland geography, a Europe geography, or a US geography. And what we need to, of course, do is we need to get the influencer layer on board. Like all of us here are now on Clubhouse because Elon Musk is there on Clubhouse. So we also intend to kind of build that influencer layer so that each one of us would want to come on Expertrons and would want to have our own set of video bots from Expertrons. So yeah, glad to kind of share this experience and really impressed with the Iceland startup ecosystem. And there is a lot of I mean, every country in Europe, of course, has its own set of culture and kind of, I mean, and there are always these pilots which you can set up. And me and Bala, we keep chatting about how Iceland, like in general, I mean, in terms of unemployment rate, in terms of professional growth, in terms of the universities, there's a lot of interesting product market fit or MVP which can be tried out in different geographies. So we are kind of excited, like with our series, we do intend to kind of expand in terms of our geography and kind of serve the global market as well.
Thank you, Jatin. That was very brief, but there's a lot more depth to what you're doing. So I know 10 minutes doesn't do you justice. I think we will switch over to the next speaker. I think now there is Silla, who's been working on Retina risk. I'll give the floor to you, Silla.
Thank you very much, Bala. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to have this opportunity to meet and introduce what we at Retina Risk are doing. So my name is Silla Jonsdottir and I'm the CEO of Retina Risk. We are a health tech company founded by world-renowned Icelandic doctors and scientists to transform the future of healthcare based on risk modeling and personalized medicine. With this approach, we ensure that the right patient receives the right treatment at the right time. Our initial focus is on diabetic eye disease, which is actually one of the leading causes of blindness in the world today, which most importantly can be prevented in over 90% of cases with early detection and timely treatment. Today, there are nearly 500 million people living with diabetes. According to the International Diabetes Federation, in India alone, there are nearly 77 million people, and this number is expected to actually cross 100 million individuals in the next 10 years. Our goal is really to prevent millions of people around the world going blind unnecessarily. So how are we going to do this? Basically with early detection based on individualized risk assessment and the empowerment of the patient. I think that is something that we are very adamant about, the empowerment of the patient. Iceland was actually the first country to start annual eye screening for people with diabetes, and this was in the 80s. This turned out to be very effective, and blindness basically due to diabetes disappeared. Other countries followed suit, and in 2015, as an example, the United Kingdom announced that diabetes is no longer the leading cause of diabetes blindness in their country. But today, it's only a minority of the global diabetic population that actually has access to regular eye screening. And where it is actually on offer, it is cumbersome and often very costly. In large countries like India, this is even more challenging, where often there is a shortage of eye doctors and necessary equipment to deal with the ever-growing number of patients. So some reports even indicate that only 6 million of the nearly 80 million people with diabetes in India receive regular eye screening. So this leads to many individuals going undiagnosed and untreated and resulting in vision loss that could be actually prevented. So this is exactly what we want to change. We are basically leveraging technology and risk modeling to offer a novel and more sustainable solution focused on personalized care and improved clinical outcomes. With Retina Risk, we are basically disrupting the existing market as today's methods alone are frankly unsustainable. We have built a clinically validated algorithm that calculates individualized risk of sight-threatening diabetic eye disease based on the patient's clinical values. You basically insert 6 risk factors, which is basically gender, type and duration of diabetes, retinopathy diagnosis, your blood sugar level and blood pressure. And in a split of a second, you will basically find out what's your risk of sight-threatening diabetic eye disease in a very easy to visual way, which are your key risk factors that you need to work on, and a recommendation for doctors what would be appropriate interval between eye screening based on the patient's risk profile. So basically with Retina Risk, you can stratify an entire cohort to better understand its combination and to determine what is required for each patient. You can basically identify the high-risk patients who need the more intense care to prevent vision loss, and you can streamline the diabetic eye screening program and make them more efficient and cost-effective by calling each patient in for eye screening based on the risk profile instead of the current one-size-fits-all approach. This would basically mean that a high-risk patient may actually be called in every 3 to 6 months, while it would be enough for a lower-risk patient to maybe come back every 2 years. Our research and clinical validation show that using Retina Risk, India could enhance current eye screening capacity by 40 to 60% and save millions of dollars in healthcare spending, while at the same time improving the clinical outcome of the patient. Just very briefly on our products, we have now 3 products on the market. First, the Retina Risk app, which basically empower the patient to assess and monitor the risk and to actually take the necessary steps to prevent vision loss. The app is available both for iOS and Android. It has been downloaded by nearly 1 million people in 175 countries, which shows that the need is all over the world. And many of these are actually in India. So we are basically making cutting-edge science available to people with diabetes, resulting in more empowered, informed, and healthier patients. And I think there is no doubt about it that patients are becoming more knowledgeable and active participants in their wellness journey as health data becomes more increasingly available through wearables, Fitbit, Apple Health, and so on. And with Retina Risk, we are basically empowering them to prevent vision loss and motivating towards enhanced diabetes care with a better understanding of the key risk factors and the impact of lifestyle choices. Our second product is the API solution, which is basically a B2B solution that easily integrates with any IT system. With this, we are serving doctors as a decision support tool to identify high-risk patients and optimize clinical outcomes. But it's not only for doctors and hospitals. We are also receiving tremendous interest in our API from digital health platforms who want to offer risk calculation to their clients, providers of electronic health records, health insurers, pharmacies, and even pharmaceutical companies. We are having meetings with the likes of Google, Microsoft. We're eager to actually see how our product fits with what they are offering, including like Google Verily artificial intelligence for the creating of Retina images. We've also entered into a partnership agreement with the American Diabetes Association, which will allow millions of American diabetic patients to easily access the Retina risk calculator to assess their risk of vision loss. There's lots of interest also in India. We've been really focusing on India for the first years now. After a year-long collaboration with Dr. Raman and his team in the Sankara Nathralaya Hospital in Chennai, we will be integrating the API into their IT system this year. And with Dr. Raman, we have actually finalized an extensive clinical validation study of retina risk algorithm in an Indian cohort, which again confirmed the robustness of the retina risk solution. We are also in dialogue with several other large hospitals like Apollo, Dr. Mohan's, Aravind, who are all very interested, and also contacting popular digital health platforms in India like Wealthy Therapeutics and Healthify Me, where retina risk would actually augment existing offerings. Last, very briefly on the retina risk, our third product, which we are actually launching this week, the Retina Risk iClinic. This is a web-based service, easily accessible to all via computer or tablet. Here, the target audience are the millions of smaller ophthalmology and diabetes clinics and single service doctor services. We have already a long list of doctors, including many Indian ones who have pre-registered for the iClinic, which demonstrates the high demand and tremendous interest in the product. I basically believe that algorithms and AI for prevention and personalized approaches are the future of healthcare. The timing is right for a solution like ours, a cost-saving technology that also improves the clinical outcome of patients and supports healthcare providers. With risk modeling and personalized approach, we can save the eyesight of millions of people in India and elsewhere by helping the patients to better understand their condition, by enabling doctors to enhance clinical outcomes, and by making the eye screening programs more efficient and cost-effective. Diabetic eye health is only the first step, as risk modeling also applies to other diabetic complications and actually other chronic disease. So next on our agenda is actually to scale our product offering to also include risk calculators for heart disease, kidney, nerves, and hypertension. We've had the early foresight to recognize that personalized medicine based on individualized risk modeling will be critical for the future. And this is basically what has brought us on this exciting journey and what will allow us to witness millions of patients around the world live healthier lives. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Silla. And maybe we'll get through in the Q&A section if there was any. The retina risk is also now being accessible in Hindi, which will come out in the next few quarters. So it is localized for the Indian population. All right. With this, I think I will jump over to last but not least, Amit. I've known Amit for over 3 decades now. So he and I went to Birla Institute of Technology and Science in India. So we have a lot of stories to talk about, but I think he has a fantastic story to talk about what he's building. With this, I will hand over the floor to Amit.
Yeah. Thanks, Bala. And it's really a privilege to be on this platform. You know, it was great to be hearing the ambassador. And we are truly living in, exceptional times. If you look at, what's happening, post-COVID, all the country, all the segments, businesses are trying to pull back the economy. And of course, we are aided by a lot of liquidity, which has also come into the system. And as the ambassador, told us, the Indian startup scene or the Indian, of course, forget the stock markets, which is just zooming right now. It's truly exploding with the number of unicorns, the startups. And I thought that let me also play my part in this, in this whole story, because India is a developing country. There is a lot of effort, there's a lot of work required. And essentially, just going back to my background, which, of course, Bala explained that both me and Bala went to BITS Pilani together. Of course, lots of stories there. After that, I went to IIM Lucknow, and then I worked with Citibank, Standard Chartered, with private equity-backed, financial services companies, which I started from scratch. Interestingly, one back in 2008, when similar situation was there, perhaps global financial crisis had just struck, and people told me that, why are you starting this company at this point of time? I said, look, if you have confidence in the fundamentals of the economy, then these are the best times to start. So after having done almost 20 plus years of corporate life, starting companies, I thought let me jump into being an entrepreneur, and of course backed by marquee investors like Bala has supported and others. Now, the fundamental problem that I've always been intrigued with is this whole thing of equality. And equality is something which is very basic. Everybody should have equal access to resources, to equal access of infrastructure, but this is much easier said than done. And maybe 20 years back, you could have bottled, inequality. You could have bottled aspirations. But now with the digital age, I see around, discontent can simply boil over. So it's a necessity, it's an opportunity, and it's a requirement right now for us to address this fundamental problem. And of course, inequality exists in all countries, all societies. And if you can, just check on the Gini coefficient, which kind of measures what is the, inequality in a society or in a nation. India, if you see historically, has been a bit of a, unequal society. Basic numbers, approximately 1% people own about 50% wealth, about 10% own 80%. Our retail debt to GDP is about less than 15%, which in, other countries, similar countries at, 35, 40%, and in the developed countries will be beyond 80%. Another interesting, stats to look at was that India has about 63 million small businesses, but only about 10% have access to financial services. And this is something, this problem, maybe I've been trying to, solve it in my way in various organizations I worked for. But maybe I thought that this time around, I will pull it, holistically. And these small businesses, these 63 million of them, incidentally or interestingly, contribute about 40% of the GDP, provide about 120 million jobs. And this is not only, a developing country scenario. If you look at developed countries statistics also, the small businesses fundamentally would provide more and more jobs. This is the experience from even Germany or US or other countries. So the fundamental question to ask is that if the problem is so simple and everybody can see it, then why is it not being solved? And therefore, you look at the banking system or the financial institutions. I think what's been missing is, of course, corporate debt is something that banks, financial institutions have been saddled with, and it's easier to do corporate debt. So naturally, that debt to GDP ratio would be about 60% in India. Also, the issue with small businesses in a country like India would be that assessment of customers, and banks are essentially about risk. And so to give it to them, assessment of a small business is still difficult. You need a direct approach. You need to sit with the customer. You need to come out of your, a bank branch or an office and meet the customer to understand as to what is happening in their lives, to be able to provide them financial services. And of course, technology helps. Now, as the ambassador was, was telling us that there've been huge developments in the last 5 years, by the government, in terms of one technology. So, the unique identifier, which is called Aadhaar in India, now it's almost universal. Everybody has so KYC becomes, very, very easy. Bank accounts, almost 80% penetration on bank accounts, mobiles, which is about, almost 1 billion mobiles have been, our connections are there. And the other thing is that in terms of regulatory changes, see, this is a problem which one person or one industry or one set of people cannot solve. It needs collaboration. And that's where the regulators and the government also came forward and have allowed a lot of collaboration between fintech players with, old financial institutions, new financial institutions, banks, non-banks, everybody, because everybody is serious about resolving the problem. And that's where eKosh was born. We set up the company in late 2019. eKosh was set up in December 2019. After that, of course, COVID struck. So, we had a bit of a stop. And then, I've been discussing with Bala, and we've set up eKosh, which is a digital and doorstep 360-degree banking services to small businesses to help them grow, to help them transform. We focus on productive, financial services, not really consumption-based. And what we've done is in the last 1 year, we've set up a loan vertical, we've set up payments vertical, we've set up a wealth vertical, and we've set up a market access vertical for small businesses. And all this is done with cutting edge technology in partnership with a number of financial institutions. So for loans, we tie up with n number of banks and financial services, financial institutions. For payments, we've launched a card of our own in collaboration with a financial institution. We've invested in a peer-to-peer, finance company for wealth offerings to our customers, and we are building a market access platform for small businesses, because it is not only required to give financial services to small businesses, but also see that how they can better access the markets or better access, the input materials, and therefore that kind of access is required. Now, last 8-9 months, we started in October of 2020, really has been exciting for eKosh. We've set up all India distribution. We've put together our tech stack. And I think we're all set. We've got, number of businesses which are running right now. And with help from, investors like Bala and others, I'm sure eKosh is going to democratize financial services, or at least, play a part towards that, endeavor in India.
Yeah. Thank you, Amit. Just like I said to the other two, I think 10 minutes does not do justice to all the effort that has gone into where you are today. And it has been amazing to watch how quickly you've been able to ramp up from concept to actually providing solutions to the small and micro businesses in India, which has been extremely wonderful to watch. With this, I'd like to get into the Q&A and maybe ask a few questions to you all, and then maybe let you all to jump in. Maybe broadly, and I'll start with you, Amit, because at least it's fresh in my mind. The financial inclusion and the whole idea of democratizing financial access has been kind of put on steroids because of at least a couple of governmental regulations. Can maybe jump into maybe one of that actually just pushed you forward into doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So, whenever you try to get into financial services, and I'm telling you maybe a trade secret here to everybody, that the biggest issue is liquidity, right? Because, as an individual, you can set up any other business, but here, to provide loans or to have financial services access, you need liquidity. Now, that is where a very key reform which has come in terms of allowing partnership with banks and financial institutions across, and the Reserve Bank of India and the government has, kind of allowed this collaboration with banks, financial institutions, on loans, on payment systems, much, much easier. So therefore, a person like me, of course, bank investors can, come in and access that, that ecosystem in terms of liquidity. And of course, in terms of technology, the whole Aadhaar, piece on the KYC. Now, for instance, one of the biggest issues is assessment of customers on the ground. And we are saying that we are going to give doorstep digital experience to the customers. Now, one of the issues from a risk perspective will be that how will you identify this customer? So now we are offering biometric Aadhaar identifier. So basically, you have a biometric machine, you put your, with the fingertip, and you access the UIDAI central server. And you get to know whether this customer is genuine or not. And you get 24 fields on that customer, which have already been input. Now, that is something which is a huge mega leap in terms of, banking and financial services in the country. And then, of course, the fact that most of the people have now a bank account, so it's much easier to, deal with. And access to technology, which is, mobiles, right? So it's much easier to deal with everybody.
Maybe I will ask the Indian ambassador to jump in, because in his talk, he shared at least a few items. The massive growth in the fintech is because of at least a couple of these kind of policy choices. And maybe you could share a few thoughts on that, the Indian ambassador, on how you see this evolving from the policy standpoint.
To take off from where Mr. Amit Saxena had said, the regulatory norms being relaxed purely in terms of the capital requirement, the liquidity, and the fact that companies and startups don't have to have money upfront in terms of RBI banking norms has made a huge, huge difference. Traditionally, it had been a major problem in terms of having an assessment of customers, as Amit had said. And to a certain extent, startup companies like eKosh are filling that very important niche, purely not just in terms of identifying the bona fides of the customer, but also using those very exclusive apps, which hitherto had been purely on a qualitative basis that banks have had to depend upon to test the worthiness of the customer. So now you have metrics on the basis of which you can actually offer loans to the customer, which has a certain validity purely with experience. So banks are safe in the sense that they know that they are going on the basis of certain identifiable parameters. To that extent, they will be confident that they will be able to invest and get money back in terms of a productive investment. eKosh and companies like that, to that extent, are happy because you have a wider spectrum of customers and clients that can be serviced, therefore democratizing the space, which had probably not have been having this kind of thing, which gives a great amount of circulation of money. What you call the velocity of money, therefore, increases in terms of what we have in the larger population. I think this can only continue to increase. Of course, over a period of time, you will see that these parameters are increasingly refined with experience, but that is something which will come as we go by. But what I see is these people will be the force multipliers in the system, which will probably take the economy to a different height. As Amit said, 40% of the GDP is dependent upon these small businesses. And imagine if these were to be able to operate at the maximum potential, and then you would see that the entire economy therefore booms. So really, I'm happy about what's happening on the regulatory front to be able to facilitate startups like eKosh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe jumping into Silla and talking a little bit about your collaboration with Shankara Netralaya and Dr. Raman and the clinical validation. This has been very close to my heart, and you know about that, and maybe the audience might not. My aunt actually went blind because of diabetes, and that's one of the big reasons why I actually took on investing in Retina, and have been a big proponent of this. The challenge in India is basically access. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your conversation with Dr. Raman and Shankara Netralaya and how they are trying to use the algorithm to solve this problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for that, Bala. As I said, it's been now a year that we've been, over a year that we've been collaborating with Dr. Raman, and he is an amazing ophthalmologist and really sees the value in the retina risk application. We were actually quite convinced that the clinical validation would actually confirm what the other studies had done. But it was still important to actually get this in the Indian population and also look at actually how it can identify the high-risk patients and to actually stratify the cohort, but also kind of like the enhancing the capacity and the savings, the potential savings can obviously be humongous. Because like what Dr. Raman has said, there is no way that there's going to be, that it's possible to actually screen everybody, nearly 80 million people annually. So what our offering, what our solution basically offers is a solution to this, that we actually will identify and make sure that whoever is being screened at any given time is the one that mostly needs it. And also this way of empowering the patient. So this is really what Dr. Raman saw in the solution, and we are very happy to be working with him now to actually integrate it with his team in their large hospital. And they have actually their own electronic health record system, and this will be then actually set into the other Netherlands hospitals. And so we are very happy about this collaboration, and I think actually that this is going to lead to even more.
Yeah. Italia is probably one of the largest eye clinic in India, and I think they serve close to 10 million patients.
Yeah.
And being able to identify maybe 300 high-risk patients or 300,000 high-risk patients and making sure that they are taken care of. They have the capacity to do that, but maybe 10 million they don't. Yes. And I think that is where, something like retina risk kind of lines very nicely with them.
Yeah. And if I may also ask Bala that Dr. Raman has also been working now a few years with the Google Verily team and been using and validating actually their artificial intelligence for the grading of images. So having an opportunity to actually have retina risk and the Google Verily algorithm match in a setting like that is going to be hugely valuable for us. So that is another aspect as well.
Yeah. So we can be rest assured that India is very much in your future plans.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe last but not least, Jatin, I know we've talked quite a bit about expanding out of India. And one of the big challenges in Iceland is that, we are a country of 350,000 people, which is, I jokingly say, an apartment complex in India. But the professional challenges of building global companies is not size dependent anymore, and hiring people remotely and actually getting your team to scale globally, even from Iceland, is possible. Maybe you can give us some ideas on how you see that world moving, because you are talking to companies and you are talking to aspirants at the both sides. And how you are facilitating that.
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting perspective to be building, and especially post the COVID times, kind of building companies for the globe and kind of building it from anywhere is something which has been, earlier that would have not been the norm, but now it's very common, like having your investor from anywhere across the globe, or having your employees sitting, like we have been now considering. I think we had this conversation of having tech people outside of India, and we have actually had a few South African developers also joining us in the team. So just having a remote team in Israel or Iran, maybe for development or something. So these things were not usual when we used to be like talking pre-COVID times, but right now all of this is kind of a very simple and very much a possibility kind of thing. And of course, given the size of Iceland and given the and we have been kind of discussing about how we can kind of scale outside of India's geography, and a very interesting piece is that the technology, like the way you build technology in itself, it has a scalable inherent nature. Like when you build it once, you can kind of use it as many times or use it infinitely, or you can scale it infinitely. And that kind of gives you the power to kind of try it at a place and try all the bolts and nut of how the pieces are moving of your venture, and then kind of experiment it at different geographies. And that's the experiment which I mentioned. Like the first 100 experts were the most difficult to get, even for us. We had to actually get people from our network who were working at top companies, but post that it became fairly more easily. And that's where a startup realizes that, hey, you've found a product market fit, and you've actually found a technology getting together with what you're building. And in the same way, kind of we see the scaling in the global ecosystem, in the global space as well. I mean, if we have to kind of dissect just the Iceland as a market for us, we'll very easily be able to break it down into these different like there are these 2 top universities, and there are these kind of job opportunities which are available on the other side. And like once we have these 20 really top experts on the platform, it will serve or suffice the entry level jobs, or maybe suffice the professional level jobs. And these are the few industries. Maybe tourism is one of the industries, and these are the few industries where people will be interested in working. So yeah, I mean, that's always good.
Fascinating, because I've already mapped this, because an expert in Iceland will obviously be speaking in Icelandic. And the language barriers are kind of being broken. The Retina Risk app has a Hindi version, and I don't see why Expertrons cannot have an Icelandic version to serve the local market, because technology has cut across a lot of these things and made it easily accessible. And so I see a lot of exciting developments with the Indo-Iceland partnership, because Iceland is kind of a gateway to Europe and the US. And for startups from India, this is a great launching market to learn and build out of, so they can scale to the larger markets in the European as well as in the US space. I think we are almost out of time from these discussions. I know it is very exciting to talk about this. At least it's very exciting to me. I can talk about this for days, so I will stop here and maybe ask Ólafur if you have any more additions to the conversation, and if go from there.
Thank you. Not really. I think it's been a great discussion, showing us that maybe our focus in the last 16 years that this council has existed on trade in commodities, things you can really touch, is, well, it's still important, but the development that has been described, this global startup ecosystem is really exciting and creating enormous new opportunities, I think, for the business relations between Iceland and India. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I'm even more optimistic than I was before the webinar.
And I'd like to thank all the guests. Thanks for taking your time out of your busy days to be on this session. Wish you all luck, and Your Excellency, Ambassador Shyam, thank you again for sharing insights about India and the startup ecosystem in India. I know I'm a big fan, and I will be doing more in India in the coming years to come. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bala.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and bye-bye.